Welcome back to What's in a Game. I'm Grace Jean here with my co-host Will Jones. We just got word that David Adelman is indeed doing an introductory press conference at Ball Arena tomorrow, alongside Josh Kroenke. So we're getting a lot of Josh Kroenke lately. Look out for us later this week discussing Denver's new head coach. We're going to break down that intro presser and talk about, what are some of the things that David Adelman wants to do differently with this team. We heard from Josh Kroenke at his intro presser that he sees the change at head coach to be a pretty big one, a pretty dramatic one when asked about, what changes they actually plan to make this summer. He sees head coach as a big dramatic change. So hopefully we hear some differences from David Adelman as to how to handle this team because frankly, I'm not holding my breath for any major roster or even moderate roster shakeups, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, we can only hope.
Um, Please do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Really helps us out. We are still trying to hit that 1,000 sub goal by the end of the playoffs. We're actually up to 920. I guess the live streams have been helping with that. So hopefully this one also will. And we can get to that 1,000 sub mark by the end of the playoffs. The off season is going to be really fun once it officially starts. Obviously, it started for all but 4 teams that are left in the playoffs right now. Um, Actually, on that note, before we get to the big news item for the show, uh, the name Matt Lloyd has popped up in a couple of different pieces ever since Calvin Booth was fired as a potential GM candidate or president of basketball operations candidate, however you want to organize your organization. uh, in that sense, from the executive level, Matt Lloyd is, I believe, the assistant general manager or the assistant president of basketball ops for the Minnesota Timberwolves right now. Like he's Tim Conley's right hand man. It's very interesting. We're kind of going back to the well here potentially. But his name has popped up in articles ever since really that first week after Calvin was fired as a potential guy they were looking at. And Matt Moore had another piece where his name popped up as a potential guy they're looking at. And I was just thinking to myself in terms of the timeline around all this stuff with the Nuggets hiring someone to head the front office and, steer this ship already heading into this off season. And if they are planning on hiring that guy, they're probably not going to announce it until after the Timberwolves are eliminated from the playoffs. So that might be my the gears were turning in my head, and I was thinking maybe that's one reason we haven't heard anything to this point about him specifically.
Yeah, I'm like, is that a good sign that we may be hiring an external person? Does it give you hope?
I mean, I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, I
I
don't
would
either.
like to, if they do hire him, I'd like to know, like, okay, what is his kind of initial outside perspective? What are the things he's going to do to try to get acquainted with the way, like the team, the way that the organization operates? What are some of the things that he potentially wants to change? Because you don't want someone like coming in like bull in a china shop or whatever. But there are some things that they're going to need to get in order very, very quickly because if they're going to trade into the draft is coming up. We have to like hold workouts, decide like who they want to target, that kind of thing. Once the even if you're not trading into the draft, on draft night another pick becomes available. Do we want to package a pick with another player in trades? Do we want to participate in trades as part of free agents? Are we going to be a team that wants to do sign and trade type things? I doubt it because that's for teams under the first apron, but who knows what somebody external might want to do, which is why I was very anxious about the timeline about of all this. But if it is going to be him, and they're waiting for the Wolves to get eliminated, we're going to talk about this. But the Wolves are currently down 3-1, going back to Oklahoma City tomorrow.
Yep.
So we might know who the next GM is as soon as like Thursday.
Hey, that'd be
uh,
good. The sooner, the better. I just want to know what direction we're going. Let's get the new GM in a press conference
yeah.
ask them some questions. But yeah, we'll have plenty of content on that coming up as
Do you think we'll
well.
get Josh a third time in
No,
like a week and a half?
he
You don't
might.
think so?
I think he could be there with the new GM and like be on the
Yeah.
side and
He's probably not going to
uh
answer a ton of
yeah,
questions
he'll
like
just
you
be
did.
like supportive dad over there helping the new GM navigate any weird stuff, but
And I
um
do want to make it clear one of the uh, options here or things that is on the table is that they do promote Tenzer to general manager and then hire someone externally to be a president of basketball operations. Honestly, I can't see the Cronkies wanting to like pay another person. By the Cronkies, I really mean like probably Stan. Like they're
yeah.
like, why do we need another person here? Maybe like I could be wrong, right? Especially if they're making less because one is Ben Tenzer, the guy who you kind of brought up through your front office, like he was an intern there since the age of 20, according to a recent interview that I was watching. And then Matt Lloyd, who is kind of looking for his first big shot, kind of running the whole thing. Um, but who knows? We will find out. Someone pointed out that maybe they'd be willing to spend money, and one piece of evidence is that well, they fired Malone despite owing him another 20 plus $1 million on his contract. And I was like, well, that also might be a reason for them to want to pinch pennies elsewhere.
Yeah, that's the worry. When people bring up that point, I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, that is more money or like dead money, so to say, but we'll see how it goes. Real quick though, before we move on to this Russ
Yeah.
injury, Shador saying he loves my Twitter. Thank you, man. Thank you for being here.
I wish
Follow
I could pull up the self-serving comment.
Hey, last show you got the Grace has been
That's
killing
true.
it on
They
Twitter with
said
her
I've been cooking.
reactions. You've been
I did.
cooking. Follow us on Twitter and come say hello as well. It's cool that we now have this live show, another way to interact with people. So thanks for being
Yeah,
here and
for
listening.
sure. First big news item. Russell Westbrook, he's getting surgery on his hand. I believe it's his shooting hand. He has a couple of separate hand fractures on his hand that were sustained during the playoffs. I saw the initial reactions to this news were kind of like, "Oh man." We kind of knew there was something off with Russ's hand. He was wearing tape on it for like most of the OKC series and all that. But a lot of people were just kind of acknowledging like, man, we had so many injuries in these playoffs and we still pushed OKC to 7. That kind of thing. Like, what was your initial reaction just to the news that like Russ was dealing with these injuries during the playoffs?
I mean, I knew his hand was hurt because we saw them bandaged up, so I wasn't surprised by the fact that he was dealing with that. I mean, surgery is never anything to dismiss. But yeah, I mean, hands are important too for basketball players. It's that's what they use to shoot
Yes.
and block and dribble. I think he'll be fine. He'll have the offseason to do what he needs to do. Is that what maybe affected his shooting and against the OKC Thunder? He shot better in the Clippers series.
Mhm.
I guess you can give him a
Maybe made
little.
a bit more hesitant in the Thunder series too. I felt like
Yeah,
there were more instances in round 2 where he wasn't as sure of even taking his shot,
yeah, which
let alone making them, of
probably a
course.
little more important
I
against the
think
Thunder, but
Mike is obviously on a rookie backs extension, and Russ is on a veteran minimum player, and they are in very different stages of their careers. But I think it's an interesting discussion to have about like some of the struggles that we saw them have at different points in the playoffs were both things that you could attribute to the injuries that we know they sustained, but also in terms of performance, not necessarily surprising given their playoff histories, their respective playoff histories. And so, where do you fall on just the individual performances part of this?
like how much of an excuse or non-excuse am I gonna give him based on this injury kind of a thing?
Yeah. For both Russ and Mike, because I think it's a very
Hmm.
similar story in terms of how
God,
how people are perceiving
it,
their
it really does
playoffs.
suck. Russ can be, he's one of those players where no matter where you fall on him, you can find evidence to support your argument.
Yeah.
Um, And it's like he didn't need to do. I guess it's like we're so shallow, so he does have a lot of expectation given like the role that he's put in on the Nuggets, especially for that contract. You wouldn't think someone making a minimum would have to do so much for us, but our bench was so limited, and he did provide some intangibles and vet leadership that we desperately needed since we have so many rookie guys. So his
Mm.
hands hurt. I may give him a little bit more of a pass on hesitancy or like things of that nature, but he was still aggressive with the ball. He turned it over more. Does that factor in? Did he turn it over more because his hand was hurt?
Dexterity matters with ball handling.
I
Yeah.
also think that's just something the Thunder do. Like if you try and drive into the paint against them, who's shrinking the floor, as we'll talk
Yeah.
about with the Wolves, that's a recipe to turn the ball over.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really look at it too differently. Like with Russ, with the injury, I don't like nothing like too crazy happened where he was so bad that somehow this injury makes me look at it differently. I just thought some games he was okay and he brought something, and other times he just kind of disappeared. Sometimes I blamed him for it. Sometimes I
Would you
didn't.
say Russ or Mike?
Russ.
When
Sometimes
did Russ ever disappear? I feel like when he was on the court, you knew he was on the court,
I feel like in
regardless.
OKC he was just like the stints went so bad so quickly sometimes when they brought him in that they went away from it pretty quickly, I thought. And it was like some games I remember watching and thinking, damn, like, what did Russ even do in this game? But
One of the things they didn't do as much in OKC was go small in that they went like 2 point guard with like Jamal and Russ. They just played Christian a lot more. I wonder if that's um part of what reduced Russ's effectiveness in addition to just individual performance. But I'm talking about the stints, right? These staggered stints where in the Clippers series, I think Christian just ended up playing less because, yeah, he was important on Harden, but he wasn't so important compared to the other guys we could throw on him that, uh, that mattered all that much. Plus, Russ was giving us like really good defense, like especially off ball defense, and then helped us run faster in those units. Like those were minutes that were winning when it was like Russ and Jamal, like
mhm.
Mike, Aaron, Yoke, or Peyton, even Peyton. But I like most of the time those Peyton plus Russ units were just bad.
Yeah, that's why I'm
Um,
like, I don't necessarily blame
yeah,
Russ entirely for
yeah,
anything because it was just look at who he's coming in and playing with.
yeah,
So it's just again like I have way more thoughts about the Nuggets roster as a whole and the bench than I do just
yeah.
specifically Russ.
Like
So
Russ,
it
yeah,
didn't change that much, but I guess it can explain some things if you want. And I'm interested to see how his recovery goes, how fast it is, what the reporting is on that. Like I'm sure they'll say the surgery went well and he's doing fine and he's going to make a
yeah.
full recovery. That report will come out, but and then when training camp comes, we'll get more questions about how he's doing, and he'll say, "Oh, I'm good," and we'll. Oh, that assumes he's still in the Nuggets. We'll see.
Right. So like let's talk about that portion of it here. He has a player option this summer. It is for a vet minimum. There are a couple of different options if Russ wanted to come back to Denver, right? And we don't know which direction Denver is going to go here. And it depends on largely Russ's market. Like he did have a really good year here with Jokic, obviously. Great regular season, great first round of the playoffs. Like I thought Russ was just good. I was surprised at how good he was for not 7 games, 6 games because he did miss the one. Um, and he was just good every. I was kind of like I'm waiting for the bad Russ game. It didn't really come, and then obviously we get a good Russ game in OKC. And I think in the second OKC game, I was like, okay, that was like a messed it, and then it was just kind of downhill from there, right? And that's probably when his injury happened. But also, like, you're not surprised if Russ struggles for in a series against a team that like forces as many turnovers as they do and packs the paint, right? So I don't know what his market's going to be in free agency in terms of other teams that will be interested. I'm not saying that they won't be, but considering last summer, he was coming off a downish year for the Clippers, but you have to consider like he was starting for that team at the beginning of last season for the Clippers team. And they went out and got Harden because they're like, we need like a real starting point guard. And Russ started coming off the bench. He was their energy guy. I thought he was a pretty good sixth man for them. They went through that rough patch. Really coincided, and I will fight Clippers fans on this. It coincided with Russ having a late season ankle injury. Then he was kind of ramping up, trying to come back for the playoffs. Kawhi was injured, all this stuff. Nobody looked good. in the playoffs, but Russ looked especially bad in the playoffs. He looked like the Russ that everybody's scared to get in the playoffs if he's on your team, right? Couldn't shoot, bad decisions, a little too excitable, especially like I remember those Mavs games in that Dallas series that they played. Come to next summer, Jokic wants him. Denver wants him. They want to take the chance, but the chance is like we'll give you a minimum. I wasn't actually sure when we heard the Russell Westbrook rumors whether they were going to try to get him on a minimum on the MLE or try to trade him into the exception that we'd gotten from Reggie Jackson salary dump, which was around the same as the taxpayer MLE. But it was a 1+1 he got last year, and then he got a player option. So it was kind of like a prove it deal, similar to Bruce's. Like it's kind of like let me try to up my value here because he was coming off of he was making a taxpayer MLE with the Clippers. So this was a pay cut for him to come and take a minimum. Now is that because no other team wanted him? Probably.
Yeah.
In
or
part.
The opportunity to play with Jokic, we can only
Right.
hope. But
It was like no other team wanted him for more
right.
than that, right? Yeah. Do other teams want to try to take a chance on him after the season that he did have with Jokic? I don't know. Maybe. We've seen other guys leave here and get paid, and maybe not do as well. So maybe other teams are taking notice of that and being like, we don't want a Jokic merchant. Not saying that Russ is, but this could be the perception around the league. And also, like, we know Russ. He's a bit volatile emotionally. Not that he is. Russ is not a locker room vampire. Okay. Russ is probably the only guy who gave a shit in that locker room for 82 straight games. Jay Kerr says Russ would be crazy to leave Denver for triple dollar signs at this stage of his career. I agree. He shouldn't leave for $100. But, you know, if he can make another like 10 million, like he's probably not going to make that here. But here are the options that Denver has in front of them. Russ picks up his player option. So that's last year's vet minimum prorated to last year's salary cap. Russ declines his player option and signs a new vet minimum that is scaled to this year's salary cap, which went up. So that probably makes more sense for him. Obviously, the cap hit is a little bit more for us, but it's not that much more because for guys that have been in the league for a really long time with veteran minimums, and we'll talk about this stuff a little bit more in the summer, but guys like DeAndre Jordan, the cap hit is lower than the actual money they get paid. So like DJ makes over $3 million on his vet minimum, but our cap hit is just over $2 million, for example. And it would be the same thing with Russ, scaled a little bit more because the cap is going up this summer. The other option is, of course, he opts out and we try to give him the taxpayer mid-level exception. I don't know if Denver's going to try to do that.
I don't think they'll do that.
You don't think they'll do that? Okay. One of the things that I'm going to ask you this question, Will. Do you think that Bruce Brown and Russell Westbrook fit together on this roster?
I think potentially they could, in the way that I just read on Jake Coyne's whole thing, which I'm sure that was, if you were on Nuggets Twitter, you saw that going around. He had a good point that, like, if one of the starters goes out, you can just put Bruce in for them outside of Jokic.
Yeah.
I like that. You can't really do that for Russ.
We kind of did that with Russ for a large part of the season. But
we did do that with Russ effectively and kind of get away with that. I think the results are a little bit better with Bruce in terms of how he played with us when he was here. We'll see what would happen if he joined now. So I like that. I think you could plug him in. You have another ball handler. I mean, not that they're the same type of ball handler and or passer, but I think like you could still play them together.
Russ is a better passer. Bruce is lower mistake, but they do kind of the same thing. Kind of pressure the rim.
I like both of them together on defense too, and maybe the offense looks like shit, but I think it could happen on defense. Both of them like holding up. But yeah, I think you'd probably be better off being like, if we're really going to make a run at Bruce, probably. Well, it depends on what Russ does with the player option.
Yeah,
but
that's the thing. Is like it's all in Russ's hands.
Yeah, but let's say
currently fractured hands, hopefully soon fixed hands.
Yeah, like, but does Russ coming back and being like, I'm coming, deter them from trying to get Bruce? It depends on like what the rest of the options are and what we're trying to do. But I think it's more likely that they get someone like Bruce if Russ isn't back, if he gets an offer from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But
And
could be
part
wrong.
of that question is just roster spots. Like we
Yeah.
have to see what Russ is going to do with his player option, what Dario's going to do with his. Just a quick follow-up question before we move on to basketball. Do Bruce, Russ, and Peyton Watson all fit together on this roster?
God damn, probably not. You heard Calvin Booth. He said what, that Peyton
Redundancy
Watson.
is a silent killer. Oh.
No, you heard him say that Bruce or P-Watt is a better Bruce Brown. Well, I don't think that panned out.
At least not so far.
Not so far. So I think I would say no. At least I don't want to see them playing too many minutes together on the Nuggets. Russ,
I
P-Watt, and
mean,
Bruce. That could be a defensive like juggernaut though, but I think you're going to see the same thing where we're going to have trouble scoring. Unless you have like Jamal out there and someone else who's a starter, like a
need
two
Jamal and
starter, three
Mike
bench
and
player thing.
Jokic, probably. We need 6 guys out there to figure out how to score.
Yeah, can we play 6-on-5 versus the Thunder?
That might actually play into their hands. Shrinks the court.
Yeah, too many people, too many bodies.
We'll see what happens. We'll be tracking all of this and more as we follow Denver's off season.
Real quick though, before we go, let's answer this one viewer's question who I don't even know is still here. But end of the show, if we have time, answer a question. El Deuce 2 says, do you think the Nuggets would have done better or worse this year had they made an MPJ for DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan trade at the deadline?
Like better in the playoffs, better or worse? Honestly, I don't know. Like Bogey didn't even look like an NBA player for half that series against the Clippers. DeAndre Hunter, I don't know, probably would have looked okay, but is he a guy that you can rely on for like 40 minutes a night? I don't know. So I honestly don't know. Probably look close to the same. Especially when you're talking about like guys having to learn, especially in the case of Hunter, because Bogey kind of already does, but Hunter having to learn how to play off of Jokic and do all that stuff. And we got a coaching change. There's a lot of turmoil going on up in here. I don't know that a trade deadline acquisition would have done all that much to change our fate this season, at least the realistic ones.
It's also hard because it's like that Mike gets an injury in the playoffs. If he does that trade, then it's like, yeah, having 2 guys over one guy who's injured sounds
Hunter
great.
also got injured in the playoffs.
Oh.
So
and Bogdan,
and then didn't look good after that. So
there was a time where I thought Bogdan did look borderline washed in that series, but there were times where they could put him in. And
after like game 5, he started making shots again.
So
and they just played zone with him. I think it's different, like having a Bogdan on a team like the Clippers that can cover for him versus a team like us that really can't cover for him. So yeah, that's the thing.
Well, hey, if you stay till the end of our show, comment, ask a question, we're here to talk. We're here to answer some stuff. So thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, we appreciate it. If you like our content, please remember again to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so that you can get all of you never miss a show. Get all the notifications so you never miss a show. Leave us a review. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. This podcast should be up there, within a day or so. All our social links are in the description. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks. Because then you got to watch all these other teams playing in the playoffs.